Hi, everyone. Good to see you. So I want to start off with just giving you some really important aspects of the Enneagram that differentiate it from anything you may have already done. So I'll give you a couple. So your Enneagram type is not in any way determined by your observable behavior. It's completely dictated by your hidden motivation. The parts that other people don't see, the parts that very often you don't know about. Your Enneagram type was created between 18 months and about age 7. And once that is established, it doesn't change in your lifetime. Your Enneagram type is a combination of nature and nurture. So it's a combination of what you brought with you for this journey we call our life, which is your genetic makeup and your inborn temperament. And those two elements combine with who and what you experienced by age 7 to create the type. So that's all I'm going to give you. And we'll show the video, and then we'll bring up the piano. There's music. That's what this is.
I got some things to do, but I
super users, super Enneagram users. And we have 4 types represented. Do you want to share your type?
Is this on? Okay, good. I'm the number 8, and I noticed on the video there were no celebrities representing my number. So I'm really not that mean. No, I'm the social 8, so I don't know if you've gotten into the 3 types of the Enneagram, but the social 8 is the nicest 8.
So she says. And you are in good company because out of this group, the 2s and 8s are the most prevalent. No surprise.
Keeping with the theme, I'm a 2, so I'm glad we've got the 2s and the 8s represented today.
Right.
Hey everyone, I'm Kristin Shrimplin. I'm a 6, and so I obviously like my back to the wall and I see all the exits right now. Good afternoon, happy to be here, Melissa Johnson. I am a 1, so I would be the Mrs. Captain America.
Absolutely. So now we'll take a deeper dive into each of these types. And we'll start with two of the core aspects of the Enneagram. Every type has a core motivation and a core desire that underlies how they think, how they feel, how they behave. And the core motivation explains why you do what you do. And it's very closely tied to your survival strategies and your emotional patterns. And then, as I said, there is also a core desire. So it's that fundamental goal or longing that drives your behavior, and it reflects really most deeply what you want in the world, and it's often tied to your sense of identity, your sense of fulfillment, all of those things. So that's where we're going to start. And I will start with you, Michelle. As a dominant 8, what is the core motivation that drives you?
So when I think about this question, the core motivation, when I wake up every day, I want to help others. I care. I want to advocate. I want to remove obstacles for my teammates, my friends. That's just my core motivation in life, is to help others. Now, how that comes across to others, sometimes it is great, and other times it looks overbearing and controlling, but that is my core desire, is to help others and advocate.
All right. My core desire is acceptance and belonging. So this comes to life most frequently through acts of service. That means showing up, whether people ask it or not, for some help here and there, spending extra time coaching my team so they can get to where they want to go. I would say I am constantly reading the room, trying to get a sense of how everybody else is feeling, and when I'm in an unhealthy space that's filled with self-doubt, like what does that person think? Are they mad? How are they feeling about that? And it's exhausting, and it creates a spiral of self-doubt and all-consuming emotions. When I'm in a healthy space, that looks like anticipating reactions, reactions of others, having a really clear but kind approach that just fuels that feeling of self-confidence.
And I think for me, what really drives me and the motivation is to be safe and secure. And so if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? I want to establish safety, security, which ultimately is belonging, for self, for agency, for everyone in this room, for the region, and ultimately for collective impact. And so it can look a lot of different ways, and I think we'll get into that in a little bit.
Well, as a 1, my core motivation is really centered around being good. And I think sometimes that can show up as perfection or striving, in pursuit of just the right thing. But it really is, for me, more born in being an example and living my life as in goodness and in virtue, or integrity. And those are some of the core, key motivations around me and my time.
Thank you. Michelle and I are going to dig a little deeper into each of the four. What does being strong and in control mean to you?
Being strong is not afraid to speak up and kind of not fight, but to advocate for myself on what I see is right in the world and to help others. You know, I think 8s get confused with, you know, they're domineering, they're controlling, and we just want to create stability. So when decisions need to be made, we can make them really quick to create a stable environment, to keep the project moving or keep things moving along. If we see someone who's being unfairly mistreated, or we certainly will step in and advocate in a kind way. But definitely I do think there's, you know, the 8 is kind of gets confused with being domineering, and that is not who we are. And I loved in the video when it said that we are really sensitive inside, and that's true. We just put this coat of armor when we go out into the world, and especially in my world, being in a male-dominated field, I have to have that coat of armor because I'm challenged every day of my life, you know, being a woman and showing up as I do. So I put that coat of armor, but deep down, when we show that vulnerability, which is rare for an 8 in public, but inside we are very sensitive creatures.
I think it's important to note, which made me think of it with Michelle, what we do when your brain habituates to a particular type. Because you didn't come in with one type. You had options. And then based on your, those all-important people, what they affirmed, you wanted to give them more of that, and the things that didn't work in the family dynamics, oh, we're not going to do that. So you wind up with this type. But what happens when you find that dominant type, we tend to then, because we over-identify with those specific aspects, we tend to overuse our greatest gifts. So as Michelle's saying, you know, I like to be in control. I will take care. I will, but without self-awareness and all of those things, you see that many times you take what is your greatest gift, and just because you overuse it, it becomes your greatest liability. So I want you to remember that. Nobody's broken, nobody needs to be fixed. If you think about the things that you'd like to change about yourself, I think you're going to see that most of the issues are just an excessive use of your greatest strengths.
I want to add one interesting comment. One thing about the Enneagram for me, learning about, you know, your childhood and making peace with your past and who you are, and closing that door and counting the blessings that came from how you grew up. And in my case, most 8s come from a little bit of dysfunctionality and instability, and that was my case. But Deni said something really critical. What, 18 months to 7 years old, it solidifies your type. And so at 5 years old, my memory, everything I learned was in the sandbox, watching. I had a brother 5 years older than me. He was bullied and picked on all the time, and I got tired of listening to this one kid come into our yard and bully my brother. And at 5, I got out and I slapped him in the face. Now, I don't condone that, but guess what? He never came back and never bullied my brother. So that, to me, was the beginning of my 8.
Earliest 8 memory.
Oh, I can get that back. I'm not done with you. How does that protective nature, if you're type 8, how does that show up in professional relationships? And what have you learned about accessing that softer, more vulnerable side?
You know, Deni's taught me a lot. You know, vulnerability for an 8 is really hard to admit. We see it as a weakness. And the Enneagram has taught me that being vulnerable is really a strength. You know, being able to step back and not shoot from the hip. We're very instinctual. We just, you know, make decisions with the information we have at the time. But sometimes it's key to step back, to be vulnerable, to listen, to ask questions, not interrogative questions, according to my husband, who's a 9, to really be intentional in letting people meet people where they're at and to slow down. Like, I work with a 5, and Deni's helped me understand him. He is an engineer. He's extremely intelligent, but I literally overwhelm him. You know, I feel him. He steps back when I walk in the room. He's just like, oh God, here she comes. So I've learned to ask one question and talk about one topic and meet him where he's at, you know, and his personality type, and we do really well together. But the Enneagram has helped develop all of that, and it's fantastic. It's a great tool for your toolbox in business and in personal.
One more. You lead a traditionally male-dominated industry. How do you understand how the Enneagram has helped you lead with confidence and authenticity as an entrepreneur?
Well, an 8 is very confident on the outside. You know, I'm so that's never been a problem for me because we are always prepping and preparing. We're putting our coat of armor on when we go into a room. We are going to be very well prepared. We are going to work ourselves to death, you know, just to show up, to have that confidence. But I will say, my strength and confidence comes in helping others find their voice. There's a gentleman, he's a laborer and operator now, and he has so much potential, and so I wanted to help develop him. That's what 8s do. They see the potential, but they want to get you from here to here and know nothing in the middle, so we can be impatient. And I see the potential, so I put him in a leadership class thinking this guy is going to be our next future leader of the company, and instead of like other personality types probably would have sat down with them and asked them questions, what do you want to do? I'm just like, hey, I know you've got this potential, this is what you're going to do. Well, it was a disaster. I put him in this leadership class and he was throwing up in the bathroom. The instructor called me and said, we need to talk. I've never had somebody like this. And so, long story short, I pulled back, used my superpowers of 5 and 2, and I asked very intentional questions, slowed down, and here I found out he doesn't want to be in leadership. He loves being an operator. He wants to be the best he can be as an operator, and that's okay, that he's happy, and that was quite a learning lesson. So that's really taught me a lot to understand the personality types in the Enneagram.
Thank you. Very good. Kate, how do you balance your own needs with the needs of others?
So, in my role at P&G, I manage a large team of folks. I counsel a president here at the company. On any given day, I'm working with a couple other senior vice presidents. I am a wife. I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old. I have 2 parents who are pushing 80, who live in my neighborhood, and I'm the only one of my siblings that lives here in Cincinnati. So there's a lot of needs. And for somebody like me, I had to really come to accept that it was okay and to actually embrace not needing to cater and deliver on everybody else's needs. I had to learn to just become comfortable with the fact and really evaluate for myself what is most important in each one of these spaces so that I can show up in the best way that I can for others and in the best way for me. And sometimes I learned a hard lesson of I was always kind of trying to swoop in for folks and provide a helping hand and always trying to anticipate needs and staying one step ahead. And several of the folks that work on my team actually also see Deni. And one of my sessions with Deni, she said, I think you're doing too much, my friend. And I realized that even as I think about this with my boys, when I swoop in and save the day and help, and I think that I'm just doing something amazing for this person, I'm not setting them up for success. I'm not helping them figure out how they can get to where they want to go. And so that has been a huge enabler for me to really give myself that time and feel like I'm giving back to others because I'm coaching them to get to where they want to go, but I don't need to do that for them.
Very good. And just as a side note, with the 2, what's really driving them is connection. They innately want to connect. So all of the giving, the doing, the bringing, that I'll do this, I'll do that, just so you know what's really, really driving that is connection. It's almost like a means to an end to do that. Yeah. And they're only happy when they feel that way. What does setting boundaries look like then for you?
Learning how to say no without agonizing over it or replaying it in my head for hours or coming back and saying, it's okay, I figured out how I can make this work within my schedule. Because I realized that when I would say yes to everything and cater to everything someone put in front of me or agree with everything, even in a business meeting, a big part of my job is providing objective counsel to our leaders, right? And so I'm undermining my own credibility when I am too agreeable. And I had a coach once say to me, what you permit, you promote. And being able to take a step back and think, like, I am promoting the idea that I'm a pushover. I'm kind of a doormat. You can give me anything, and it's like, yep, I'm right on top of that. I've got it. And I had to really realize that I was undermining my own credibility and what I wanted for me, and to really make that step change. And as a result, then, am treated with a whole different level of respect and interactions. You know, having that seat at the table. Having the leader say, what do you think about this, versus, hey, I'm going to need you to just go run and take care of this instead.
Right. And how important is it for you to feel appreciated or loved in your relationships? How important is feeling appreciated?
Well, huge. So it's huge, but I've learned to let go of the notion that in order to feel appreciated and loved, I have to give someone something. An act of service, right? And so it was a big moment of reckoning for me. And I remember saying to you, how do I fix this? I get my self-worth from other people, and I don't want that anymore. And you said, we're going to rewire your brain. And we did. But that was a huge moment for me to realize that it was, in my head, it was this perceived transaction of, like, I'm not worthy of that love and acceptance until I can do something for someone else. And on the other side of the coin, there was no expectation, right? Like, that was always already there that whole time. And so that was a major light bulb moment for me.
Very good. Effective communication is obviously vital at P&G and how you do your job. How do you use the Enneagram to craft messaging that resonates with different audiences, both internally, externally? How does the Enneagram help you to be able to?
So Enneagram helps me think about all the various different ways that the message can be interpreted, for sure, and creating this in a way that is, you know, best positioned for success. But it has also helped me as I have to navigate approvals for messaging across a whole variety of different leaders and personalities. How do I take that feedback and action it instead of just getting caught up in my head and taking this feedback as some, like, terrible personal attack on me? It's funny because the role of PR has probably never been any more difficult than it is now. I mean, the environment is constantly changing, and it's not going to get any easier. For somebody like me as a 2, it's very easy to absorb everybody else's emotions around me. And for somebody in a PR seat, it's critical that we don't do that. And it's funny, years ago, I had traveled to Sedona. I had never been there before, and I saw an astrologer. I don't know anything about astrology, and I still don't, but she asked me what I do for a living, and I said PR, and she said, that is the worst profession you could have ever chosen. And she said, it's the worst profession because you feel too much. You should be in a role where you can help people. And coming through the journey of self-transformation in the last year has helped me realize how I have grown from that, like, I feel too much, into how I can turn that into a superpower to create the plans and the materials and the messaging that gives us the best shot of resonating with so many different audiences.
Kristin, how do you experience fear or anxiety in your daily life? What's that experience like for you?
It's about to be a support group all of a sudden. I will answer that. I just want to say real quick, I do want to give tons of kudos to Deni. I've been able to do the Enneagram with her a little bit over 2 years, and it has absolutely transformed my personal life. It's transformed my professional life. It's taken me from a realm of being extremely, extremely unhealthy to something where I would now guess perhaps I'm a little bit more healthy. And it's great listening to an 8 and a 2. I have 8s I have an 8 and a 2 on my C-suite, and they're vital, and they're interesting. All of the types are. So the way that fear and anxiety shows up in my life, it's just in my DNA. It's in the neurons, it's in my cells, it's in my muscles. I tend to be a very, very, very tense person. So literally, when you think about fear with 6s, we're called the loyalist or the inquirer, the skeptic, the loyal skeptic. Fear is in me and I live in my head. So if I'm constantly in fear in my head, that will travel to my body. And that's been part of my transformation and really understanding this framework. And so when I say I was unhealthy, it was the fear and the anxiety that went from my head, overload, toxic stress, in the body. The body keeps the score, and it was just showing up quite a bit. I'm constantly, so you can have the big fear, the big anxieties that blew up in the phobias, or you can have the daily, I'm gonna sit with my back to the wall, I'm gonna look at all the exits, and I just live with it now. To a little bit, I do what you talked about, I'm constantly scanning. I was listening to all their answers, I'm looking at their body language, I'm listening to their tone, their inflection. I'm very well of what she's doing. And I'm taking it in. And it's not so much just from fear and anxiety, but I've been hardwired. I better be prepared. Yeah. And that could be if she's going to have an emotional breakdown because the boundaries have gone out the window, I want to be prepared to establish some safety and security for this individual. That's some ways it's lived in me.
And how do you approach preparing for potential problems or crisis? What does that look like, the approach?
Yeah, so I work at an agency, it's called Women Helping Women. For those of you who may not know, we're a 24/7 response agency to survivors of gender-based violence. So sexual assault, stalking, intimate partner violence, domestic violence. And so we respond to the insidious nature of violence that operates from power and control. I think it's no mistake that I'm in a movement where I have the privilege to be someone who prepares. So how can I help the agency? How can I help staff? How can I help, as they help survivors, how can I help this region to prepare for one, what is already happening, but what further risk may grow, and how can I prepare to mitigate said risk, whether that is violence, whether that's fiscal risk, whether that's legal risk, whether that's risk that you're social service trying to navigate something that's big, it's growing, and are you going to be successful in kind of an entrepreneurial mind in building the preparation for an epidemic? So there's a lot of things of how that comes into play in the day-to-day, but you can believe there's a very elaborate Excel spreadsheet, as well as flow charts, as well as notes, as well as scribbles, with scenarios A to Z. Contingency plans that happen within each, and if this, then this, and this, and this, and this. It can be exhausting, but it can also be transformative.
Thank you. Trust is always an issue for type 6. So in your work advocating for survivors, how does the Enneagram help you and your team build trust and empathy with those that you serve?
The Enneagram has been huge for that, because you're not going to be a good leader if you don't know who you are. Full stop.
Whoa.
And that's what I'm saying, like, Deni and this framework has changed my life. and my leadership. Consequently, our entire leadership team has gone through this, and we talk about this every single day because we serve survivors. Anyone who's ever experienced any sort of trauma, trust is out the window. So the way to heal with trauma is to reestablish trust. You have to know who you are if you want to be in that space. So we lead at the agency, get comfortable in your skin, figure out your edges, grow to the places you need to grow to, because at this agency, we're going to walk the talk. Survivors deserve that. Many, many of them, and we serve about 9,000 a year. The systems have failed, so there's nothing to trust there. The person who claimed to love them violated the trust, and this is something they've known most of their life. And that empathy comes in. You got that great video, and you're going through this process. If you want to be an effective organization and leader, you don't want just one type of Enneagram number. So that's the other thing we do at the agency. We don't have any 7s yet in leadership. Probably not a surprise, the enthusiasts at a gender-based violence agency, I don't know. Not opposed. Teach us some fun. But yeah, that's part of the trust and the empathy we have to build on all the gifts of all the styles.
Thank you so much. Melissa,
Yes, ma'am.
as a 1, how do you handle situations where you feel that things are unfair or not done correctly or any of those things? How do you handle those?
Well, I just want to maybe, before answering that, say that I don't know that anyone comes out of the gate like loving their type. I mean, I sound like a frosty, rigid bitch. Like, I go to, I can be fun. I can be fun. I promise I can. But, I think going back to the comment around how these are just formed so young, and if I'm being really vulnerable with you, I was exposed to domestic violence very early in my childhood, and I think I formed, I'm guessing, some preconceived belief that if I was good enough, if there was enough order, if there was just enough goodness, then everything would be okay. And I can recall on many actions in my childhood where I tried to force that or implement that to be a thing. So now as an adult, I have a very low tolerance for mistakes, and when things, do kind of go wrong or aren't the way they should be, I have to really challenge myself to move away from the philosophy of how things should be. That there's this constant prescription of my belief of every day that I see the world through this lens of order and structure and goodness and, correctness that is good, and it can be the double-edged sword, but I think by and large being able to see in myself that that is in part maybe some truth for me, but broadly it's an illusion, so to work to stop subscribing to this is how it should be. So I challenge myself sometimes just to maybe offer by example another way, or sometimes just shut up. I can learn to be quiet, so.
Very good. And how do you feel? How do you respond when you make a mistake? What does that do to you?
So as a 1, the inner critic is a cage. It's on constant loop for me. And I think it really depends. It depends on what it is. I was having a conversation with our executive vice president, telling him I was coming here. And I think it's also funny too, because I look at my sheet of paper. I'm prepared, and because there's a right and perfect answer, I'm talking about myself. Chill, relax, right? But, I think that having this trigger, and I think for me it's all rooted in worthiness. I am worthy if I do well. I am worthy if I am perceived as good. I am worthy if I am perceived as good enough. And when I make a mistake, I have to also ask myself, is the challenge really the mistake or the perception of what I think you're now thinking of me because of the mistake? And if I can suss out really a little bit of a nugget of truth, I've been much better about just making the mistake, loving myself, and going on. And because that critic is so intense for me, it's a constant work in progress. So Deni knows that well about me.
So the port works on very complex public-private partnerships. How is the Enneagram to help you improve collaboration, communication among all these diverse stakeholders that you have to?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a little bit hard. So for those of you who are not aware of the Port Authority, we're a real estate development and finance agency. We do a lot of bond financing and complex real estate deals in downtown and throughout Hamilton County. So our stakeholder base is incredibly diverse, from electeds to affordable housing advocates to just general economic development practitioners and anyone and everyone in between, essentially. So I guess as a one inside of the organization, we have a tremendously talented team. My executive vice president is an 8.
Yep.
Hey. So, but a very, good, compassionate, and, high level of justice. So I think that, for me as a 1, kind of stepping away from understanding what is the right way. Also as a 1, my level of tuition is incredibly refined, and I can get through a process and an order mentally so fast. And that's the right way to do it. And usually it is, I hate to say that, but usually it is. But for the stakeholder, that's not. I mean, it has a real impact on communication, like my rigidness, or how I might come as myopic, or like this is going to be the one path to go through. And so I think that as a team, we've learned to trust each other, and the little bit we have practiced the Enneagram as an organization, to rely on the very distinct talents and perspectives our types will bring to the table, and hopefully formulate a plan that's in the best interest of everyone.
Thank you. And now these, I'll open up to all 4 of you and see who bites. Can you share how the Enneagram has informed your approach to team development and mentoring others inside the organization? It's obviously critical to a leadership position.
Well, I'll just offer, because I have the mic and happy to pass it down. I think as a 1 and, working towards being an example and being good, I think that I can leverage the high side of my type and actually really encourage development and very genuinely lean into an individual and craft a path for them that is supportive, strategic, focused on growth, get the hell out of their way and let them do it, and that brings me joy. I love that. I also have to balance that with the understanding that I have a ferocious level of expectation. It can be crushing. I mean, it's just where I thrive. Again, I can be fun, I promise. But that's where I have to remember that, for some of my team, they have experienced that side of me, and it's not been positive. So I think that, making sure that being type aware, kind of from the full end of the spectrum, and making sure that taking that high side of your type can be a real benefit. And so that's been something that's, I've been able to lean in on with our teams.
Anybody else? Okay.
I can build a little bit in that a tough lesson I had to learn as I managed my team as a 2 was getting out of the wanting to be so nice all the time, and realizing that was doing a disservice to my team. And you'll see that the 2s are connected to the 8s, right? And so to be able to channel that 8 connection in a really healthy way, to provide very clear and kind feedback and coaching to my team, being able to do that in a way, when I understand them more deeply and their Enneagram type, do that in a way where they can truly understand and hear and accept and action that feedback, as something that can help them grow in their career versus, for me, it was very easy to choose just shut off my mind when someone was giving me feedback and take it as a very personal criticism.
Yeah.
And so being able to channel that and separate it and getting to that very clear and very kind space.
Thank you.
And I'll just say real quick, we do the Enneagram at the agency to the point right now. So I got exposed to it, trying to work through it, and then took the C-suite through it, through Deni's expertise, and then our entire leadership team. So right now we probably have like 20 people who on a daily basis are trying to learn more, practice more, and then every month we come together and we do a bunch of different things in our agenda, but at the end of the 30 minutes is kind of just like a learning time and a reflection time around one topic with the Enneagram and for them to practice. And then we drill it down into our one-on-ones, our weekly meetings. And so now it's just becoming much more of a language that we're utilizing. And you mentioned feedback, and then the great thing is we've been learning, through some of these tools, these great quad folds around feedback and conflict resolution. And if you learn how to give feedback according to your type or your team member's type, like, this isn't personal. Like, this is the way, as a 6, I want feedback now, right? Because I have fear, insecurity, anxiety. Don't tell me you want to meet with me in 2 weeks to talk about something. And so when the team members learn that, right? And with 2s, if I have to give maybe some constructive feedback, I know I'm going to have to say, you know what, like, you are amazing, and you're so valuable in the work, and it's true, right? But they have to hear that, then come in. And to an 8, direct, to the point, blunt, but fair. Right?
Let me tell you what you're doing wrong. Sorry. That's what, I love it, because a lot of times, when you give, you're trying to critique someone, or, you give constructive criticism, like if someone comes to me, then I'm like, you know what, that's a great topic. Let's talk about you. And it's terrible, and I have to remember that, because I'm so quick to, go right into improving things. But I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's great. That's great.
One thing I would like to add, that mentoring. As an 8, I really try hard to mentor young women, especially in, when they're trying to get into a leadership role, and especially in the construction industry. I want them to find their voice. I feel like when they walk into male-dominated rooms, they are quiet, and their strengths, and they're not their true selves. So I like to have one-on-ones with them and just ask them, why aren't you speaking up? What's holding you back? And I really try to work with them, and that gives me fulfillment, and it also teaches me a lesson, like, sometimes, be quiet, listen, lean in. And so it's been good. So if you ever have that chance to mentor on the Enneagram and learning the personality types, it's really key into development, not only professionally, but personally too.
What advice would you give to someone new to the Enneagram who wants to use it as a tool for both their personal growth and leadership development? Any advice you give them?
I guess I would say one of my biggest takeaways, especially in the last couple of years, is that life is a state of mind, and really embracing that and leaning into understanding myself. I have to give a big shout out to my line to my 7. In one of the questions we didn't maybe quite get to, there was asking for an example of a time when, it's helped you professionally. And rewind like 3 or 4 years ago, we did a round robin of like some "you're so awesome" and then a little like constructive feedback. And I had a colleague tell me I was not a team player. I was like, like I wanted to die. I was like, oh my God, that's so awful. And I've remembered it ever since. And so, being more cognizant of just the power of 7 and every resource I have available to me, and making that a part of my daily practice, and believing that I am more than just my 1, and that it really is a choice, and life is a state of mind in that regard. So
I will just add, for me, the game changer with the Enneagram was learning about why I'm an 8. Because when I found out I was an 8, I was like, oh no, not an 8. It sounds awful. But Deni, we talked about my childhood, and it just allowed me to make peace with my past, and to realize I'm a strong woman, and embrace that, and you're authentic, and you get right to the point. These are all great traits, and that just, I can't, until you go through it and really understand your personality type, and the from your child to now, I just highly suggest it. It's really helps you personally know who you are, and also helps your leadership style too, and how you communicate with others.
Yeah. And I always say what makes us so transformational is because I don't believe, just in life in general, I don't believe that you can change what you don't understand. If this stuff didn't work, I mean, even if it's working and I'm still struggling, right? I don't get it. I don't get any of this audio-visual IT stuff, right? Other people find it very easy. But I think once you can understand why you do what you do, now you can be like, oh, God, and you can start taking it apart and you can start understanding it. And I don't think we understand ourselves. I think we live on the surface of ourselves. We live on the surface of other people. In regards to other people, and I think you need to get down here into the deep dive in order to change, what you see there. What I'd love to do is give us a few minutes. I just want to put the names back up. Where am I? Am I going the wrong way? Yeah, I just told you I don't know anything about this. Where was the ladies? There they are, and now, yeah. I'd love to offer you the opportunity to ask questions of someone. For a couple of minutes. What? Right. Very good, sorry. Anybody got a question? Have a question? And you can ask it of a particular individual.
I think my question is more generic. Is there one or two more popular Enneagram types?
It depends on where you're looking. Right, so in a large corporation like P&G, you're going to find a lot of 8s and 3s. Actually, P&G is a 3 company. I mean, the company 200 years ago was based on the beliefs and values of 3. And even if you're not a 3 and you work here, you're going to figure out some connection to 3. So you'll find a lot in there. You will not find a lot of 4s here. You'll find a lot of 4s in the agencies. Right, where they're able to do more creative work. But even though I see it here in my work, a ton of 8s, in the world, that's the one that has the least. So it kind of depends on the setting.
I have a question for Melissa. As a type 1, how do you get out of your own way?
Vodka? No. That's a really phenomenal question. How do I get out of my own way? I think that I have to remind myself. Gosh, that's a good question. That I have to be more present, I think is my biggest challenge, and present, like not to live too far ahead and too far behind. If I start living in expectation or regret, or the critic is out of control, or how it should be, or why it wasn't, and what's going on, and like this perpetual dissatisfaction. So if I can really just be more dialed in, and also, I think that this is going to sound, I don't intend for it to sound like ego, but this sense of, right, like I'm not that great. Like, there is like this level setting of your own self that when you kind of lean into what could be the double-edged sword, it's like, yes, my type can show up very well and very strong for the organization. It does daily, but it also I could just be, just in my way and not succeeding and in my own head because I've not pulled my head up enough to really be where I need to be and focused on what I need to be focused because I'm living in a different dimension. So it's probably about being more present.
And I would also add, for any type, I think getting out of your own way, it all starts with self-compassion. I think we were so hard on ourselves, just so hard on yourself. And I think to do all of that, you have to talk to yourself differently, right? All of those things. And when you start, it's all self-awareness. And when you hear what goes on in here and how horribly you talk to yourself, it's actually shocking.
This question's for Deni. Hello. What are some short takeaways for each of the numbers when working with a team if we don't have the resources to do the Enneagram for our whole team? Are there like short little takeaways for each number? Like I know I can usually always pinpoint a 7. Like, are there things like that?
So what you don't want to do, which most people do, is then just start typing people, which is without a doubt the worst thing that you can do. I think that you will see there's similarities. There are look-alike types, and just to know that you cannot type someone by their behavior, 2 and 9 look a lot alike. So even if you don't know the difference, they both focus on the other, very excessively, right? 1 and 6 can look alike, depending on the subtype. A self-pres 1 looks just like a 6. It's the worry 1, and there's a ton of anxiety. You just see how the more withdrawn types, the 4, the 5, the 9, they really need to think about things before they can respond. But we rarely give them that privilege. So do you know what I mean? Even if you don't get it down to a 9 different references, and 3, 7, and 8 are very aggressive, right? I mean, we're assertive aggressive. So just know that. The 1, 2, and 6 are more collaborative. They're going to be very aware of what's the right thing to do and who haven't we heard from, all of that. And like I said, then the 4, 5, and 9 can get left out because the 3, 7s, and 8s don't shut up in the meeting. And they're talking over and they're not listening. And the 4, 5, and 9 are like, how the hell did I wind up here? And I'm just going to go in my happy space. And you're missing out on the most brilliant people on the Enneagram. And it's really pretty easy. There's so much. My website has great stuff. Our website, Kelly's and mine. Great stuff that will give you, hit on that button, and it will give you all you want to know in that regard.
This actually follows up really well to that. I have thought my entire life that I was an 8. I've lived my life as an 8, and I'm a 2. And I was so mad when I got that result. And then I did the feedback survey and read all the feedback and then reread the 2, and I was like, holy shit, I'm a 2. So have any of you, did you all know what you were before you got the results and feel it, or were you also surprised, or can you mask as something else? And then, I don't know, it just was so shocking to me, but also so accurate.
So, the Enneagram is a map of self-discovery. So for any map to be useful, you have to start off on the right place, right? If you don't, your growth strategies, everything is off in that regard. And because of it, when I introduced this in the corporate world, I didn't know anybody was doing it. It was like voodoo and people thought it was crazy. And now it's incredibly popular. So everybody is on taking an Enneagram test. But the problem is, and there are hundreds and hundreds of tests that you can get for free or $10 or whatever. I call this now the Theranos effect. So I reference the faulty blood tests of Elizabeth Holmes' company. And to get to any reliable result on a test, you have to make sure that you're measuring the correct data, and you have to make sure that you have the high quality tools in order to measure that data. But like I said, unfortunately, there's tons of assessments now that are inexpensive and unreliable because what they're doing is measuring your behavior. It's cheap to measure behavior. We've been measuring behavior for a very, very long time. And then once you get that and this says, oh, I'm a this, your brain will start sorting out the information to make that true. So the IEQ 9 is the only, by far, the most reliable Enneagram assessment available anywhere in the world. It's in 8 different languages. It's 95% accurate, which is the same accuracy as Myers-Briggs, StrengthsFinders, DISC, all of that. So it offers scientifically the most accurate, kind of comprehensive assessment, and with the most advanced algorithms and technology, cutting-edge technology. So that's really the problem that we have now. But it's what you just said, I see every day. I go into rooms all the time now. And it's like, you said my type doesn't change, but it did, because I used to be a whatever. I was like, no, you weren't. You never were, right? So I will tell you, for anybody else that has not taken it, or you want I always hear, can I get my partner? Can I get my 18-year-old to take it? On our website, on the Corp Consciousness website, you go down to services, you hit the assessment, and for $60, they will get the same 23-page assessment that you got, which I would recommend.
I'm just going to add my 2 cents about an 8 because I thought I was a 2.
Oh my God!
And deep down,
And there's a line there.
there's
That's
a
why
line.
you do it. You're connected.
Right, and Deni told me I'm harnessing my superpowers of two. Twos are
Yeah.
great, you know,
Yeah.
they are. And so, yeah, there's a lot of similarities between twos and eights.
Yeah. And that's what you want, is to have access to that you want. The best a two will ever be is when they can integrate the gifts of eight, and the best an eight will ever be is when they can integrate the gifts of two. And this is what I want for you. I don't want you like sitting in your little house of 3 or 7 or 9, right? I want you just really developing all of these other assets that you've had your whole life, but you've buried them in your unconscious, right? So you get all of these tools in your tool belt, and it's a matter of saying, in this situation, I'm going to, you know, take my eightness and put it in that two energy. So, very good.
Jessica Robledo Garcia, Senior Director of Demand Planning here at P&G. My question is for Deni, and I welcome panelist insights. So we just did this exercise to come up with our brand equity, and then we were to pair the Enneagram. Is there at some point where you just say, maybe here are the things that I know could be a sore spot, but these are the only ones I'm going to focus on? Like, at what time, or how do you consider like how you flow with your natural personality and what you choose to try to soften or not?
And I always want you flowing with your natural personality. I just want you seeing where you're overusing it. So it's not to take, you don't want to change. You don't want to change caring the most about connection and other people. It's just start seeing where you take that gift and you make it a liability. Because it's like you take your gifts and you put it in a paintball gun and every person and every situation gets it. That's the only problem. And when you start seeing that, and you know, there's so much to learn. There's a great book called The Complete Enneagram that I would say is excellent for you guys to start, and it's just to type, to really dig into yourself. You got to, all eyes on you right now and seeing who you really are and why you do what you do. Way before you start thinking about other people. And a lot of people don't do that, and they just type. Yes. What are you going to say, Kate?
The build I would give you is that you've got to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? And so, like, really delving into what Deni says, all the things you like hide in your pocket. What you think might be your greatest weakness could turn out to be your superpower if you just start thinking about it differently and harnessing it differently. So I love that you're working on personal brand equity and what is it that you want to be known for, and look for all of those opportunities to be known for that, but realize that there's a lot of power that comes from diving into the things that make you uncomfortable.
So good. Yeah, if you're doing things that are comfortable, you're not doing your work. You should make sure you're uncomfortable a whole lot of the time that you're pushing yourself. Done with that?